it was nice to have a little.
Apology for letting you meet via Zoom today with everything going on. I actually have a hearing in that same case that's going to trial in 10 days this afternoon. So thank you for agreeing to that.
Sure, sounds like you're pretty busy, so we're happy to accommodate where we can. I'll go ahead and turn the recording on just so we've got consistency in our.
You turn it on? Yeah.
All right, so we are recording for IUPA and City of Port Orange negotiations. It's September 17th. The time is 11:02 a.m. We'll go around the room real quick. I'm Heather Carazales with the City of Port Orange.
Carly Meek, Assistant City Attorney.
Jeremy Bird, IUPA Secretary.
Jared Alvasado's acting president, IUPA.
Ted Curtis, Secretary,
And attending
You're the
via
treasurer.
Zoom, we
Correction,
have
Treasury, I'm taking your spot.
Gary Wilson, attorney for the union.
Matt Jones, Attorney's Office, City of Port Orange.
All right, very good. I do have a couple of things to share and talk about today, but Gary, did you or your team have anything first?
No, I think we were, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I think we were waiting to hear from the city today. Is that correct on
Yeah.
wages?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
I know wages is the big one, and we've been going back and forth. But before I get to that, I know in our ground rules, we said that if there were any articles that we wanted to open up, we would do so by the third meeting. The city as a whole is looking at something else that I did want to see. I didn't bring a proposal today, but wanted to see if you guys would be interested in adding additional holidays. Currently, you guys have 8 in your contract, and the city as a whole would like to get up to 10. So before I put some effort into, not a lot, but, brought forward a proposal for holidays, did you guys have any objections to adding a couple more holidays?
We're not going
No.
to be opposed to adding additional
we're not.
benefits.
I just wanted to make sure.
No, it's
So,
not something, it's, it's whatever can help, it helps. I just want to make, I can tell you that it wouldn't trade a lot of a wage idea though for what the bargain.
no, and that's not the
unit is.
intent. It's not this give and take thing. Like I said, the city
But
as a
no, I think it
whole,
would be great.
we're looking at just having more holidays.
Arbor Day.
Are they looking
So,
at floating, like more floating or just specific ones?
no actual holidays.
Actual
So,
ones.
yeah.
Which two?
So you guys already have MLK Day.
Yeah.
I'd probably look at adding Good Friday in just because it breaks up that first part of the
Okay.
year where we don't have a lot between right now. We've got New Year's Day and Memorial Day and nothing in between. So Good Friday's kind of in the middle of that. The rest of them are kind of the latter half of the year.
Sure.
So I would probably add Good Friday and I think Veterans Day. I think the
Okay.
lieutenants got Veterans Day in their last contract. But I'm trying to get them consistent throughout the city.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So I'll certainly bring that back to you guys. I just want to make sure that you are okay with me opening up another article because we hadn't earlier on. So,
I have no objection to it.
great, thank
Yeah,
you.
Heather, I'd like to say, we didn't expect to hear that today, but thank you. We wrapped up Volusia County negotiations just about a week ago. And interestingly, our home office did a holiday
Oh, look
survey.
at that.
And it's interesting, I know you probably can't see it, but one of the issues that came up there was the number of holidays of all the agencies here in Volusia County. And Volusia at that time was 9. They were able to secure one more holiday as well. But Brevard has 11, Broward 11, Flagler has 12, Hillsborough 10, Jacksonville 10, Lake County is 11, Lee County, Osceola 10, Orange County 10, so Seminole County 11. So I think it's a good gesture by the city to be aware that, at 8, you guys were behind. So I thank you. I think our team thanks you for that offer in doing that.
So interestingly, I'm glad you have information on the county. They're not exactly responsive when we try to email them for information. So I did bring some information today for you guys to share. And I'm gonna try and, darn it, Robin. I was gonna try and share my screen with you guys at home, so unfortunately you won't be able to see it, but some information that we looked at last time. I'll go ahead and hand out this wage proposal. I will tell you, 2 on this side. I'm gonna take one down,
Morning,
pass
Chief.
it around. It is the same proposal as last time. So I know last time that we met, DeLand had just come out with $22.42 as a starting rate for police officers. So I kind of put together this little chart with DeLand's updated rate. I know Daytona Beach is going to $20.60 an hour. Orange City, that is they're not finished yet, but they're going to be in about that vicinity of 1968. And Holly Hill starting rate has come up as well. I did not have the county's information, so what it's showing on the slide is older data. Historically, we know we're going to be behind the county, right? We know we can't really
And
compete. with them.
Volusia's going to be 22, even 22.00.
Okay. So they're going to move right up there, right behind DeLand, which would put Port Orange fourth. What I got from DeLand was they want to be king of the hill in recruitment. So they also jumped out there for fire as well, and for their general employees. They've really made a huge move, more so than anybody else. So I think we're still going to be in the ballpark for recruitment efforts, right? If we're only 10 cents behind Daytona Beach, I don't think that's enough to have sway somebody's decision one way or the other. I think when you look at everything else that Port Orange has to offer, that's still very competitive with them. What this proposal represents is an average increase of 5.8%. So when I average what everybody's going to get, yes, it's a little bit different for each person, but the average increase is almost 6%. The average dollar amount is $1.36 an hour increase across the board there. So these were some examples that I had last time that haven't changed. So again, a 4-year officer base is at $50,000, right? That doesn't count any extra overtime or special detail or anything like that. And a tenured sergeant base is going to be at $73,000 annually. Again, not factoring in any overtime or anything like that they might have. So that's the city's position. Like I said, we've tried to figure out what everybody else is doing and where they're moving. I know there's a lot of moving parts and pieces as we're all negotiating, but we still think this is going to put us in a fairly competitive spot going forward.
So, and I can't see the screen, but I think I heard you say, so there's no change in the city's position from when we last met?
Correct. So we're still starting officer at $20.50 an hour, starting off a sergeant at $27.50. And I don't know, Gary, if you had made any movement. I think you mentioned last time, because you had just gotten DeLand's proposal the day prior to when we had met. And I think you were still saying there might be some moving there, maybe backing down that starting rate to reallocate those dollars, some longer tenured officers. I don't know if that had happened or not.
We made a counter proposal. We haven't met since then, though, to hear if the city has accepted it. They had to meet with their city, gosh, what's his name? Drawing a blank on your counterpart.
Oh, Mark Hayward.
Mark Hayward.
Yep.
Has to meet with city manager Bob Floyce, and I don't know if that's happened yet.
So you guys counter with the same starting rate still at $22.42?
Actually, my recollection is we countered at, I think, about 10 cents lower, 10 or 12 cents lower, but to use those dollars for,
Right.
to address compression
Okay.
for your, and I'm sure that's what our team is. We understand you need to have a starting rate that's competitive, but I can probably sense that our side of the table is going to feel like that we're going to still be dealing with some compression there. Because what's the average increase then for everyone else? Is it 5%?
Citywide?
Yes. I mean, for police, what's the proposed?
The average is 5.8% percentage, and then the average dollar increase is $1.36. And I've actually got the data of what it would be for every person, right? And that's how I got the averages. Was I ran a report with what everybody's current rate is, what they would go to, and then just did a formula to do the averages of those dollar amounts. So if you guys wanted to see individually what each person would be getting, I have that data. If it's
40 cents.
You have it handy?
Is the raise for the guy that's 17 years. 40 cents is what, like less than, it's like 1% and change. Something like to that effect. It's very minimal.
So cost of living is 5.8%. So effectively, we got to sell pay cut for everybody except the people that don't even work here yet.
I think it goes, let me find my sheet.
Yeah, I'm looking at my notes, Heather, while you're pulling that up. When we met on the 26th of August, we had asked, or we hypothetically just said, if you increased $1 more across the board, it would equate to an additional $200,000 to the city. So you still are at 17 steps in the city's proposal, right?
Correct. So we've added a step because you're currently at 16. So we did add a step. But the increase, at that higher step as a long tenured officer isn't as much for those that are still in their new learning curve in the beginning.
But
And I
you,
think that's where Ted is saying that that's what, a 40-cent?
but you didn't really add a step. You just took it from 16. So 16 got no raise.
You didn't raise 16 and then you just added 40 cents to 17, which is like, I could get the math, that's a percent and change somewhere around there, correct?
Yeah, that one's only 1.5%.
So very minimal.
Then you've got,
I know in our last meeting too, and I know Brett is not there, I guess, today.
No,
there
he's
was
off today,
discussion about
unfortunately.
looking into other ways the city might consider, helping police and or fire first responders with a referendum if necessary. I mean, go ahead and, our thing would be to commit to a higher raise now with the expectation that a referendum would pass, as they typically do to support first responders. And then the city would have some peace of mind in knowing that the funds are going to be there.
yeah, I know we talked to Matt about that. Matt, I don't know if you were able to dig anything up on if that was possible or not.
Yeah, Gary, we did look into that. As our research shows, there's no legal mechanism for doing that at the local level, at the city level. If you have anything to the contrary, we'll certainly look at that. But our research shows that there's no way for us to do that.
Okay. And I know we've talked about the city having a reserve, and that reserve is higher than it, I guess, previously was due to the federal funds because of COVID. But what we heard the last time, and I guess we're hearing again today, is that the council does not want to tap into any of that to.
Not for
Address
recurring
it.
expenses, right? So, one time, pots of money are okay for one-time expenses, right? So lump sums, right? I think you guys got a $500 lump sum last year, if I recall correctly. So something like lump sums could be possible. Now, that doesn't help build up your annual salaries, right? So typically they're not pensionable, but that might be open for discussion. So.
Is there any signing bonus? I mean, that's one thing Sheriff Chipwood, that was put on the table by the sheriff's office here 2 weeks ago. That
I know we've
of
discussed,
a
I don't think,
$1,000 signing bonus.
I don't think we have a signing bonus in our agreement that we came to consensus on last time, right? It was just more what happens if you don't fulfill your requirements. But I believe that.
Gary, we structure it as basically a stipend, an education stipend. We do books, training, expenses. That's kind of our incentive that we've historically used, and that's what that agreement that we've shared with you guys shows as well. We'll have the final version with all your edits. We should have that at our next meeting if we need one.
Guys, I don't know, but I'm just trying to talk off the top of my head. If you guys got any thoughts, anything you want to, I think, I'm sure they're a little bit discouraged. I think we were hopeful between a month ago, about 3 weeks ago and today, that we were hopeful that there was going to be better news than this. Again, the holidays, 2 additional holidays being offered are certainly appreciated. I'm happy to share with you that holiday report. I think perhaps our guys didn't even know. I wasn't aware that maybe Port Orange was behind the curve.
I was certainly aware. And when I did a survey just of other cities and the county, in Volusia County and Flagler County, and the average is between 10 and 11. So I've been well aware for a while that we were behind. So I'm happy to see us, hopefully make some movement on that, like I said, citywide. So that's separate and apart from any of this stuff. It's not contingent upon what we do in the wages article. So
Are you telling, Heather, since nothing's changed from the last meeting today, is this sort of it? Are you telling us this is?
I think that the city as a whole has a lot going on right now. Just with, the $15 an hour wage issue, we've got other We're also negotiating with fire, who falls into that bucket of they're under $15 an hour to start, and how do we get them up, and how soon do we get them up, as well as our general employees, and that contract is open next year. So we're how are we going to handle those negotiations? So there's just a lot going on right now. I think at the moment, this is about where we're at. Now, again, if we want to restructure this a little bit, so for example, get the right mouse here. You know, an 8-year officer would be getting $1.27 increase, right? If we want to take it and make that, you know, 107 and make the 17-year guy 60 cents, right? I can reallocate those numbers. We can play around with that if that's something you want to do. But ultimately, dollar-wise, this is where the city's going to be.
I mean, it's just so far apart. I mean, it's so far apart. I mean, this is I'm expecting literal screaming on my phone when I get done with this.
I'm already getting text.
I mean, this is for the city council and for the city to know these cost of living adjustments and where we're at, trying to be an agency that's pulling these good officers and keeping good officers and not wanting them to go other places. And I have been telling people that we're working as hard as we can to keep building, getting closer and get closer and closer. I know that 17% was a number that wasn't entirely reachable at this moment, but it gives you the idea of where we needed to go. But I mean, I truly expected to see 10% to beat the 5% curve, the immediate 5% curve that we're taking. This is just a really big impact on these guys for wanting to wait and giving me time to negotiate. And I have literally made no progress. And it's pushing us into that. It pushes us. Everyone has basically said to me, we're absolutely not taking that number. This was the first one we got. They said, absolutely not. We'll all go to impasse. We won't. And I said, let's wait and see what they say. Let's wait and come back. You know, and then the second one came, and it was more infuriation. And I said, you know, hey, let's give them the opportunity with the DeLand numbers and the Volusia numbers, and give the city council a chance to basically go, hey, we didn't know about DeLand and Volusia. Let's see what we can do to make this happen. I don't know. I'm not a smart person, but I am smart enough to know that last year we knew that we had to get ahead of this curve, and this was a big deal. And I hate that this was we set the budget, and having known that we needed to seek out a more competitive number for the future, and be like DeLand obviously took the time to go, hey, I want to get ahead of the curve in case we have an issue. I completely understand that you have general employees going on and fire going on, but you have to show me that there's like some goodwill coming from this council, and I'm not seeing it. I see. I mean, it's almost as just as, we don't care. Here you go again. I know that Attorney Wilson is going to share the same idea that I have of just him looking at this as a whole and going, we're not making any progress. And I mean, we haven't even lifted off a step. We haven't even lifted off of the two previous things and tried to push ourselves a little bit closer. The savings fund thing, when we keep talking about it, you know, I completely understand not wanting to use savings money for reoccurring costs. 100% understand that. But my argument will continue to be, if you used this portion that you needed to get closer to the wage example that we wanted, which I think was, if we met in the middle, say 200, 250, 300,000, and you used it for this 1 year's worth of contract going into your next budget year to set the budget and know that, hey, we need to make up this amount, which also talked about, it's not far off. It's not far back. I can't believe that there was an attempt to roll back millage. That was insane to me. Insane. And I was applauding the firefighters that are out there with their signs because they're frustrated. We're frustrated. I think this is going to be a huge motivational hit. It really is. I want to keep this idea on the table because I want to give the city one more kind of opportunity to go, hey, use this one time for this fiscal year. Let's get to a closer number that I can get these guys at the police department happy to take. Doesn't have to be 17%. We can get closer. But if you're getting closer and saying, okay, we had to take $300,000 for this fiscal contract and know that for the next year to change the budget over so that we had that made up. And now we are competitive and we're ahead of it. And when we see you again, we won't be having this discussion. We won't be throwing 10% figures. We'll be saying, yeah, let's move 3%, whatever. Because we're ahead. We're ahead. We're nowhere near ahead. I don't say anything to be mean or malicious or threatening, but this is literally, I'm gonna get screams of impasse. Like we're not even bothering.
Bargaining is the back and forth and the meeting in the middle. And we've been trying to meet, and this is the same piece of paper that we've come back with him, even though there was a changing information.
Well, that's not what I heard a couple of meetings ago. It was the city's responsibility to make up the difference on how far we were apart, if I recall correctly.
We've been negotiating the whole time.
Absolutely.
We're trying to get there.
I want to come in. I had every intention on today to getting a percentage from the city and saying, okay, how about this, and this? How about this, and this? And getting a little bit closer and going, hey, we feel comfortable. I can bring that to my guys. There's no way I can bring this. There's no way. They're going to freak out.
I think if you look, and Gary, what I have on the screen is historically going back to 2014, what the city has awarded in increases for all of our units. And if you look, it's anywhere between 1% to 3% up until last year. Mm-hmm. So I think where police got somewhere between 8 and 11%, depending on who you are. I don't know if it's realistic to go, yep, we're going to maintain 10%, right? We're just going to jump. We're going to have this long history of just doing 2.5% to 3% and going, but now we're going to constantly do these high increases. I don't know if that's going to be realistic, but we're at almost 6% on average across the board, which is still far and above anything that anybody else has historically gotten except for you guys last year.
Well, the market has changed.
Right.
I mean,
we
the
have
market
to,
is not the same as it was in 2014.
You can't buy what you can, for that same dollar.
We
It's
have
not
to-
there.
Well, that's what the citizens of Port Orange are going to say is you're raising my taxes now.
They voted
and
for it.
right.
They voted and said, we want this to happen.
We
And then-
can't we can't have that argument. I last year was not this like gift. This was us trying to do a great thing to fix compression. We're still trying to fix compression. It's not a hey, we all won the lottery and we're just feeling really great and saucy this year and you guys get 11%. We worked for this too. This is when like I said before, when we get to these competitive numbers, then going down the line, your officers and sergeants are no longer looking at it and going, oh, okay, they don't care about the raises anymore because they're still competitive. Right now, everyone's going to go, okay, I can go to New Smyrna and I'm only going to take a 40-cent deficit, and now I can go home and I can take my kids, whatever they work out to themselves. But that's what I have people doing is they're watching their steps and trying to see like, should I leave or should I stay? And no one should want any employee to be constantly doing that and thinking about that. I say it again for the purpose of, for I guess asking is, why are we not able to get closer to this number together and use this savings until you guys can redo your budget with needing that to change going forward. So that way we get to a number where we come in and we see you guys and it's a couple meetings and we settle on, hey, nothing's really changed. We're all feeling good. Hey, can we, we're looking at, can we get a stipend for the gym membership? Something, whatever, who knows? But the whole idea is to fix the gigantic problem of wage compression, fix that and keep the people here that we need to keep the experience from leaving, and take other officers who we would love to get when we lose our officers for whatever reason. Some are just retiring, some are leaving, some are doing other jobs. But let's recruit the high-end DeLand, the Edgewaters, the New Smyrnas, the guys that have all the experience, and we're like, out of the box, they're great, they're good to go. We can't do that. There's no way to do it. There's just no way to do it. It's the same reason I brought it up last time, is why is there so many police officers that live in this city, but all of them work for different agencies, but they all want to live here. So we have to as a team, and I still have every desire to figure this out as a whole together and leave today without this. There's just no way. If your orders were, here it is, we're done, I don't want to hear anything, then I understand, and we'll caucus with Gary for a minute, but there's just no way for us to sell it. And honestly, it's a pretty big hit for motivational wise.
That's certainly not the intent. I'm sorry, go ahead, Gary.
I was going to say, let me address a few things. Back in August, we did come in at 20%. We've lowered that to 17%, and we would be willing to negotiate further. What I think, and I'm also a mediator, putting on my mediator hat for a minute. Good mediation is where both parties walk away a little happy, a little sad. That's just the nature of everybody doesn't get what they want, but you reach a resolution. And what I think Jared said, and I tend to agree, is that we haven't seen the movement by the city in the last couple meetings, other than this morning with 2 extra holidays. Again, I think, that's just a recognition that you were behind the curve. And I think we even acknowledge that. We appreciate that. But on the wages, we have made some movement. We haven't seen movement by the city. We've asked some questions, and we keep being told, well, the referendum we heard today, that won't work. We don't want to touch the savings. But I think, as you just heard Jared say, I think there's a compelling argument. It seems to me that the city council knows that it's got a war chest larger than it ever had, thanks, sadly, to COVID. But I mean, let's call a spade a spade. The city has more extra money than it ever had. Money that's at its disposal, and we're sitting here at a crisis time. You said, I guess, the average increase is 6%, right, for city employees? Well, hiring a guy to cut the grass, and even hiring a firefighter. My law partner represents the Brevard County Firefighter Union. Hiring firefighters is not as hard as finding people to do police work. It's just not. The firefighters are first responders, and it is certainly a job to be thankful for, and it's a risky job. But I think we all know that being a police officer carries a little more risk. You don't have people firing bullets at you generally, as a firefighter. So that's why I think there's a disconnect in saying, well, the average increase is X for city employees. Well, police are no longer like your rest of your city employees, and they don't need to be treated that way. They need to be recognized for what they are, and that is, these are the creme de la creme that we better make sure we have and hold on to. Because, again, I bring this up every time, but we turn on our TVs, we see what's happening in major cities, thankfully not in Florida yet, but it could happen, police leaving in droves in Chicago, New York, Portland, Seattle, because they're tired of it. They're tired of the risk versus the pay. And it's going to get that way in Florida if we don't address it. And some questions I have that are real hard questions are, and we've had to do this with some of the other bargaining units. Can you tell us, Heather, the pool of money, if the city won't budge, at least as of today, let us take the pool of money. Let us come back to you at least and come up with our own step plan. Like, for example, is the city wedded to 2050 having to be the starting pay? If they're not, and I don't mean this to sound bad, but we can't bargain for the people that aren't members of the union. It's not we're not here to advocate for the starting pay of an officer that's not a member of our union. The city, that's the city's concern. But if the city will be flexible and say, you know what, if it can go down to 20, that gives us 50 more cents to work with. And if we chop off this 17th step that you offered, that's only 40 cents higher, give us the pool of money, let us address compression, and at least maybe we can come back with a new plan. Now, if you're saying no, and I'll give you an example. Chief Deputy Gallagher in the Volusia County Sheriff's Office said, no, Chitwood wants the starting pay to be $22. I mean, that's an absolute floor. If you're not saying that on behalf of the city, then let us take the pool of dollars. Brody Hughes did that over in Volusia County. We worked with their team and we came up with our own plan and counter proposed it. Is that, I'm asking, is A, that an option? And B, since you said it would cost $200,000 roughly to go up $1 across the board, would you be willing to at least entertain the thought of meeting us halfway? Of saying, okay, well, we can't afford 200, but I'll go back to the city and see if we can push for a larger pie for you all to carve up to deal with compression. I guess we need to know what is the pool of dollars that we have to work on to try to either fit it within 16 steps for officers and 10 steps for sergeants, and maybe we can crunch the numbers. I mean, ideally, I think we need to do what Jared is suggesting and get the city to really consider using some funds in reserve this year to address this problem. And then we won't be coming back to the table next year asking for 10%. But if they don't do it now, we're going to be coming back next year and having to ask for 15 and 18% again. And I mean, that's the reality, because you're never going to catch up, but you're going to put yourself even further behind. So is that a possibility to sweeten the pot some? Let us take the numbers and then have a meeting in a couple of weeks and see if we can, put our pencil to it and see if we can come up with a better proposal that might at least have the bargaining unit members a little more interested than what we've heard today.
So a few things in there. First of all, right or wrong, I'm not an expert negotiator like you are, Gary. When I was given the authority to negotiate, I did not come in and lowball anybody and go, let me see how cheap I can get people, right? I went, how do we slice up this pie? This is the pie. How do we want to slice it up, right? I think we all want the same thing, especially from my HR perspective. I want to pay my employees competitively. I want my employees to feel valued. So that was my starting point. This year, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but the city council is raising taxes more so than they ever have in the past. I think this is the 4th year in a row that we've raised taxes, but I think this increase that we're going into is the highest that it's ever been. So if we can find a way to get there without raising taxes even more, I'm certainly open to it. I am not, it doesn't have to be 2050. It just has to be competitive, right? And I've showed you the chart where everybody's starting out. So as long as we're still competitive to get people in the door, right? I don't know if 20, 50, and 20 is going to make that big of a difference. So like you said, Gary, can we take that 50 cents and reallocate it, in step 17 and reallocate those? I'm certainly open to rearranging these numbers, like I said, whatever you feel is going to be most fair and equitable and beneficial to your membership. Certainly willing to have those discussions, but also willing to entertain, because adding to salaries does raise the taxes. There's other ways to compensate employees, right? So if we wanted to talk, taking lump sums and doing something with that, I'm certainly willing to take that, right? So if you say, hey, I think, this guy deserves a 10% increase, that annual dollar value is X, okay, can we get X in a lump sum instead, right? Happy to entertain those types of conversations, but ultimately, the pie is the pie here for these recurring expenses.
Gary, I'll just add that, I think the council has put a focus on those first, I'd say handful of years, maybe 4 to 6 years in that pay scale. So, they definitely want to keep those up there. I'd hate to say it, but I think cutting that back too much would probably be a non-starter.
Well, I would hope the city would want to keep its 5 to 15-year officers though too. And I think the average age, correct me if I'm wrong, and Chief can weigh in on this too, but isn't the average years of experience of your current department, what, 3 to 5 years probably?
Could actually tell you real quick.
I mean, you probably have a relatively younger department already, but those officers like at the table there that have stayed and stuck it out, those are the ones that, are dealing with the compression, and that's the hard part for Jared and his team to sell it is, yeah, we understand they want to reward the new guys and have a good hiring rate, but it is we don't have in front of us something that Jared and his team can take to the bargaining unit and get ratified. It's just not, and that's what we have to do. Both sides have to come up with a document, most notably the wage article that they can sell to their members, and it's just not there. And we've mentioned a couple of just random thoughts. One is the signing bonus, but I guess I'm hearing that is not necessarily something the city would consider either. Is that right?
I don't think it's outside of consideration. I just think it's not something we currently have in place. I know we briefly talked about it with the previous police chief Grimaldi had, if I recall, you guys had some conversations about that, pros and cons to it. So, but again, that's outside of what the bargaining unit covers for new hires. So I don't know that that's something we have to settle today in negotiations. We could certainly have labor management meetings to discuss that with you guys down the road if we think we need to have something along those lines for a recruitment incentive. And I would say, Gary, that as I've mentioned in previous things, I don't want to take money away from the bargaining unit members that are already here. I would love to work with the chief's office and the city to get recruits, and then look at the signing bonuses that are being handed out, and maybe different things that are being handed out to recruits at the moment to try to pull even better. But
and by the way, Jared, I'm talking about not a signing bonus for new hires. I'm talking about a ratification bonus. Okay. Meaning that all bargaining unit members get it. Now, this could be a one-time, non-recurring
Correct.
thing for which the council. This is what I'm talking about. Volusia County did. The sheriff, we put in a ratification bonus, meaning that everyone, if the contract was ratified, and it has been, or it's been approved by the union, once the county signs, or the sheriff signs off on this, they're going to get $1,000. And it's gross. It's called grossed up, meaning that they will net $1,000, not even after taxes. So the sheriff is picking up, he's grossing it up where they will get $1,000. So that's one outside the box thing that I would ask your side, Heather and Matt and Carly and Chief, to go back and see if they could consider something like that. And it's going to increase. It's going to increase the payout, but it means that is something that could be justified as a one-time, thing. And also, and I've had these done in other deals, you can make it pensionable. So it counts towards their pension as well. So that might be something, and again, I haven't talked with my team about this. We're sort of brainstorming since we're close to impasse, it sounds like, on wages. I'm trying to give a couple of ideas. We're all putting our heads together to say, can you go back and find some other money? And I think a ratification bonus, signing bonus, you're right, Jared. I think what you were thinking was for new hires. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about an actual contract ratification bonus.
Which, and I'm to piggyback off of that, Gary, I think that what I would ask the city is if you want to look at that, how do we allocate that savings correctly, right? Well, I guess it's a good, if we want to put nice bows on stuff, well, let's look at what Governor DeSantis just did. He handed out a check to first responders, and it was just a thank you for being here and staying employed in our state during these times. City of Port Orange can look at the same thing and go, all right, let's come up with a lump check of a, hey, everyone who is currently employed and stayed with us during all these hard times, here's a thank you. It looks great to the community. Looks like the officers are happy. It makes up a lot of that gap. It's a one-time lump sum type thing. It's not a reoccurring cost. Gives the city time to look towards the future and budgeting concerns. So I think I agree with Gary, is that should be something that we could actively talk about too. I would like to get the breakdown of kind of what the number would need to be, or what we would be shooting for a lump sum. I don't know if it would be $1,000. I don't know if it would be $5,000. So, with the bargaining unit, I think in this bargaining unit, it's about 65 or 63.
62, not counting any
So
current
62
vacancies.
officers.
And I will tell you, Gary, to answer your question, the numbers I have in front of me here are average time and grade, so either time as an officer or time as a sergeant. So it's not total years for the 10 sergeants, but it's 8.3 years. So your average time and grade is just over 8 years.
So and just with the quick math, if we were as much as a $5,000 check from the city, it's 300,000. 310, which is meh. It's not that much.
But isn't that kicking the can down the road? Because then next year
Right.
we'll be twice as far behind.
Right.
Not only that, but the money
we're just gonna be far.
the money would come from the reserve fund, the same place it would come from if we gave percentages. So the money would come from the exact same place, but it would just be kicking the can down the road. So next year we're twice as far behind.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to stay with a percentage. Hey, we're trying to push this up, so we can avoid doing exactly what Jeremy's saying, is kicking that can down the road and throwing Band-Aids on a hole. We don't, if you need it, it's an emergency, it's one thing, or you have the extra funds to do it as a thank you, like the state of Florida did. That's great, whatever the motivation was there. But I think the perfect storm on that is, let's work on getting closer to this gap, and then if it's too far away, going with these, presenting the idea of a lump sum to kind of make up some of that difference. We aren't that far in the worst case scenario. We aren't that far, but I can't, like I said, there is just no way that I'm going to get anyone at the bargaining unit to go, that's fair. They're just not. I mean, it is just upsetting. I know we were hoping to have a brief caucus with Gary to kind of talk a couple things over, if that gives you a little bit of time to kind of speak amongst yourselves, if you're okay with that. If we could have like a 10-minute caucus.
Sure, I guess, Matt, that means you'll have
That'd be
to
great.
drop off, and then I can maybe Teams you when we're back on. Will that work for you?
Yeah, if you just want to let me know when to jump back on, I'll hop off for you guys.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Let me mute this. Okay. Gary, I'll let you kind of start.
Okay. All right. Thank you for giving us some time to talk. I think what we want to first do, I mean, it was good productive time for us. I want to go back to a couple things you mentioned, Heather, and also I think Matt had mentioned something. I guess I see him coming in now, by the way. Okay, sounds like he's connected. You mentioned, and we understand the desire to be attractive for hiring, and certainly I'll call 0 to 3 or 4 year officer. But what is the city's position on retaining its veteran officers? And how do you feel that's reflected in this proposal?
So I think we've consistently said, we want to be in the upper tiers, right? We're probably not going to be number 1, but can we be in the top 3, top third or top quartile is what we've consistently said. I will tell you, I don't have that information at my fingertips. If that's something, we kind of focus on the starting rate, right? You see my comparison chart show that, but if you guys have data that this is what an 8-year officer in Edgewater makes, or this is what an 11-year officer in DeLand makes, certainly willing to look at that data and that information to see where you guys are at comparatively.
Well, okay, so you're not prepared to really say how the wage proposal from the city is what it's communicating to the veteran officer of, say, 5 years and above.
I don't have the information to say that the veteran officer 5 years above is at X spot, let's say in Volusia County, right? That they're in the top third or the top quartile. They may be, I don't have that information, so.
Okay. The reason I asked that, and we discussed it a little bit, is, the data's out there that the cost of living right now increase the inflation rate is about 5.8%. You mentioned that there's an average increase in the city's proposal of approximately 6% in the proposal. But if you look at it a little deeper, and the average officer, you said, is about 8.2 years. Once you get past the average officer, that number of years, it's actually a pay decrease, because the 9-year officer under the city's current proposal is really only getting about a 3.5% raise. So it's actually a pay cut when you factor in the cost of living, and that's why it's tough. It's especially tough on the more veteran officer that's in the bargaining unit to feel good at all about the city's proposal. Is there any other? I'm asking our team now. Is there any other question that you wanted me? Oh, I do have one question, Heather. I want to make sure I understood both last meeting and this meeting. Did I understand you to say that the city's position is that the reserve funds are available for non-recurring expenses, and they could be used for a wage increase, but the city does not want to use them for this? Is that correct?
It has been our past practice and policy to use one-time funds for one-time expenses. So we do not have a past practice or a policy to use one-time funds for recurring expenses, e.g. salaries.
Okay. We have spent some time then, and we're willing to make our final good faith wage proposal verbally, and then Jared's going to hand you something with some annotations on it that then your side could go back and actually crunch the numbers on it. But essentially, if the city wants to start at 2050 for starting pay, again, that's the city's desire. We don't want to stand in the way of that, to be competitive in the market. But we want to counter with a proposal. We dropped from 20 to 17. We'll drop all the way to 10%. 10% is our best and final. And the way that would be accomplished would be starting at 2050 for new hires. In year one, or their 1 year anniversary, they would get a 5% increase. But from years 2 through 17 would be a 10% wage increase. Am I saying it correctly, Jerry?
Yes, so I'm gonna elaborate on it also. So the way we are presenting this, I am using the numbers. This is from the previous contract. So this isn't to say that I'm changing the step plan percentage that it jumps. What I'm suggesting, and with the way I'm trying to make this offer, the city wants to be at 2050. That's understandable. That's their position. No problem. The way I'm making this work, where it flows correctly, is that probation officer is at 2050. That year, as he becomes a year one officer, he takes a 5% increase from 2050. The years 2 through 17 officer is getting a 10% raise off of the number from the previous contract. I'm not changing the step percentages. So whatever they fall in line that we've already talked about in our previous contract, that still be in play. Whether it ends up to be a 2 or 1.5, whatever it was, we're not changing that. And then on the sergeant side, I'm not, again, changing the percentages at all, rather than just taking a flat 10% and moving it across and saying, here's your 10%. So I have talked to, as board members have also, is the general thought of what would be fair. Not us making money and being rich, but what's fair. And I think that it's a great way to get ahead of the cost of living, which is, say, that 5.8, and now we're looking at 4.2% of an actual wage increase broken down. And I think that would come off more fair than the general 6, which has a taper effect. I'm giving this math because I'm a simple person and I like simplicity. I do not want to. We agreed last time on those percentage steps, and I think that when we negotiated last time, we were happy with how the step plan was working. I think the city was happy with how the step plan was presented to work. So I don't want to reconfigure percentages to make some people happy and others not. I want to leave it the way that we both agreed last time and make this easy on the city to go, you guys can work on your recruiting number. You have it now. You taper it well into the first year. That officer is still competitive. He's still happy. And your officers from 2 to 17 are all here and they're staying here. I'm going to leave it with. Go ahead, Gary.
I was going to say, and the other compromise by our side, by the union, is dropping from the 20 steps that we initially requested for officers, and also dropping the additional 5 steps for sergeants that we initially proposed months ago. So we would be okay with 17 steps for officers, 10 steps for sergeants, as a part of this compromise proposal.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand the numbers. You just wrote down 10%, right?
Yes.
We'll break it down and give it to you.
Okay, yeah, because I want to make sure. So for example, step 2 was $20.19. So we're saying you're going to add 10% to 2019 for
Correct.
step 2?
Correct.
Okay, and then you would move from step 1 to whatever the rate for step 2 is
Correct.
when you increase your step. Okay. So
Yes.
we're actually just increase each step by 10%.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
not, and it's the simplest way for me to give this to you so you have it and you see where the math is coming from, and there's no adjusting the step percentages in general. We're still following the agreed upon step plan, but we're just getting ahead of these times that changed for us. We're fixing a little bit more of the compression. We're getting ahead of the cost of living. This is the simplest way for me to give you a good faith offer that if we can meet this, I can get it for vote. And I can say that there would be a lot more participation in this than what was offered, because I already know it wasn't going to happen. It's not going to happen. But so it's not.
Gary,
What's up, Matt?
sorry to interrupt you, Gary, my bad. Gary, did I hear you say this is the best and final offer? Was that what was communicated?
Yeah, I'll be honest, we were gonna come back at 12, but we said, no, if Heather is saying, we've heard y'all's best offer, we wanna give you our best offer, because and we're asking that it be taken back to the council, and, if you tell us that it will, then we can schedule another meeting in a couple weeks. If you say it's a no-go today, you tell us that, then we know where it impacts.
Well, yeah, we don't, yeah, we're obviously going to communicate it to council, but I just wanted to make clear that you're telling us this is your best and final offer.
This is the best and final offer that our team believes that the membership
There has to
would
be
agree
way
to.
more. I'll let you.
And they've heard a lot of communication already.
Well, wait, but I
Is that
think
right?
this
We heard
is.
it. Ted and
There's my written copy.
everybody? Jeremy?
What's that?
Is that correct? That
Yeah,
you feel like
Yeah, Matt, I mean, this is, Matt, this is a way for us to, I want to get ahead of, the whole trying to start early thing. I don't want to go over the fiscal year and deal with this retro argument again. So this is also a good way to make sure that we don't go over top of this fiscal year problem where, last year we agreed to issue out these $500 lump sums because we ran over. So we're not having to do that on this contract. I think the math is pretty good. I think it's us giving you a very reasonable, when we're looking at this as a whole. We're not making up the figures on the cost of living. This is just data. So I think to especially when we look at the sheer fact of just a 5.8 removing off of this, we're looking at a 4% increase for each officer. I think the city council, I think the city should sit there and go, okay, yep, I think that's a lot more reasonable, because I don't have there's no vested interest in me to go back and forth for fun. This is not enjoyable. I love seeing all you, even though I can't see you today, but I don't like to be here going back and forth. So I want to be easy cut and to the point. This is what we can agree on to present to you guys. And if you can meet this, we can get to a vote. And I think it would go better. But if you can't, it's easier for us to just accept the fact that that's what the city's position is. If the city's outright going to say no way, then I would prefer to know it, because I'm not willing to continue to go and keep rescheduling to have the same outcome.
So just so that you guys know, in my 30-second math here, and this is on averages, this is not individual calculations on everybody. But that proposal is an average increase of $2.41 per person an hour, which is about $140,000 additional in just salaries. So once you add pension and taxes into that, it's about $230,000. Again, those are average numbers.
Sure.
It's not actuals, but to kind of give you a ballpark of how much more it would take to get there. So, but we'll take your proposal. I'll run some better numbers so I can get an accurate dollar figure on what that is going to cost, and we'll take it back. So.
Okay. Like I said, I don't want to waste anyone's time. This is, I'm not trying to make a name for myself here by doing this. I'm trying to do what makes sense to everyone and makes sense to the city as best as possible. I know I know money is money, but at the bottom line of it, the city council needs to accept the fact that this is literally 4.2% off of numbers we can't control. And I think that's a really fair offer for them to have to.
Here, the difficulty with tying it to a CPI, and I completely understand the argument, and that's that's cold, hard fact, I understand that. But you're not gonna, it doesn't work both ways, right? So CPI will only work in your benefit. You're not gonna come back to the city and, if, let's say the CPI decreases and we see a CPI decrease in 2 years, we're not calling back money based on CPI. That's not something that the city has at its disposal. And we've never really tied the salary to CPI. I do understand what you're saying. Everybody's dealing with that, right? That every employee that we have is dealing with a CPI that's going crazy right now based on economic things that really are outside of our control. Gary, have you had an opportunity to talk to them about the impasse process? And I mean, that's the final offer. I mean, we're headed into impasse after this?
Well, without seeing movement in the last 2 meetings from the city on wages, I don't know where else we go. I mean,
Okay.
if you've got something creative, you can tell me. I mean, I think you've heard a couple times now, our people can't accept the number that we've now heard twice. We've come down, remember, we started at a 20% increase. We're now down to 10. We're half of that. We're not seeing any corresponding movement from the city. In fact, we're not seeing any movement from the city. And with all due respect, that extra step, Heather, you or somebody on your side added, wasn't really an added step after all. You just took step 16 and kept it the same and then added 40 cents on to 17. I mean, so tell us what we're missing, I guess, is a better way to say it, because we're not seeing movement from the city. We're seeing a hard line in the sand. This is it. We're doing our very best to say, all right, can you try this? Can you try this? Can you try this? Can you try this? And we've done this now for 3 meetings. I don't know what the hell else we can do, honestly.
Yeah, I understand.
I mean, so if you're asking me, are we telling you this is it? Yeah, probably so. Unless you can surprise me here in the next 30 seconds and say, Gary, you've given us something good to think about. Maybe we could do a ratification bonus of $4,000 per member. Or you know what? Maybe we can go back and really lean on the city council and tell them, you know what? It is the reserve is for non-recurring, but this is one of those darn non-recurring things. We got to catch our officers up. I haven't heard that. What I have heard today, and these members have heard today, is, well, yeah, it's for non-recurring, and wages are not non-recurring, therefore we're not going to look at it. I'm saying, you know what? You got a bigger reserve than you ever had at Port Orange because of the windfall, one of the few good things of COVID. Port Orange has got a nice piggy bank bigger than they ever had right now. Well, you know what? Every now and then you got to crack into that piggy bank with a hammer, and you got to use some of it. And we're saying, think outside the box. Maybe go to the city council and maybe urge them, Matt. Urge them for once. Urge them. Lean on them. Be the city attorney and give them your legal advice that if they want to avoid an impasse, this might be a darn good way to do it. So yes, that's what we're saying.
Gary, are you proposing that as part of your offer that there's a one-time stipend? Because that's not what we just heard in the offer.
I mentioned in trying to think outside the box, because apparently nothing's happened on your side of the table for the last, since August 26th, to do anything about wages, to at least think about a ratification bonus, just as the sheriff of Orange County, of Volusia County just did. And I know you guys communicate. We shouldn't have to do all the work for you. Heather knows all these city managers. You guys have data. You guys have data at your fingertips. The men across the table from you are going to work every day, serving and protecting. The people on your side of the table, including you, are sitting behind a desk and have access to data to get information and to talk to people and come up with solutions.
Gary, you have the same access sitting behind your desk.
You know what? And we are giving you proposed solutions. We're not hearing anything from your side of the table, except, nah, we don't think we want to do that. Nah, we don't think we want to do that. No, that's not.
Nobody said that, Gary.
Yeah, they
Nobody
are.
said no. That's not what they're saying.
I heard today.
That's a mischaracterization.
I heard today that the reserve that the city has is for non-recurring, and wages are non-recurring, so therefore you wouldn't look at it. What I want to hear, and we all want to hear, is come back with a definitive answer from the city council that says, we, the management team for the city, your side of the table, has taken a proposal to the council to consider using the reserves for this one time, 1 year, 2021, so we don't get into a retro argument, because I remember you last year, Matt, saying, oh no, we can't do retro, city's never done retro, but we're about to be in that situation again. Remember Wayne Helsby saying that, and you repeating that mantra last year? Well, we are doing our best to try to get past being in a retro environment again. And we're coming up on September 30th very quickly. So the sense of urgency needs to be on your side of the table. It
So
truly does.
Gary, I will tell you, I am working on getting a shade meeting for next Tuesday. So I will take your proposal. I've heard, what everybody has said. And we will do our best to come up with what we believe to be a fair proposal. So if
Will you commit, Heather or Matt, or do we need to get the city manager involved? Will you commit, who seems like a good guy, by the way, only had one meeting with him so far. Will you commit to going to the city council and requesting on behalf of the union, the police officers, IUPA, to consider tapping into the reserves to come up with the additional money to meet the proposal that was just presented to you verbally, and that you're going to crunch the numbers on to accomplish this 10% compromise?
I said it in the beginning of the meeting, I think we all want the same thing. So from my HR perspective, I always want to make sure my employees are paid fairly and equitably and competitively. Like you said, think outside the box. How can we do it? So, we're discussing all options, right? We are trying to be creative. So we will continue to do so in order to reach an agreement. I will do my best.
Okay, I appreciate that, Heather, but you didn't answer the question. It's like cross-examination trying to pin a witness down. Can I get you to commit to asking the city council what I just said? What the union is asking you to do is to ask them if they would consider tapping into the reserves that they didn't have last year. Again, you've admitted on the record, and all the union members have heard it, that the city has more money than it ever had in reserve because of COVID. And my God, if there's ever a time to use it to retain first responders, now's the time.
And I think we've all said that, it's
Well,
not that,
no,
it's year two.
I'm not going to let you off the hook. Will you ask? We are formally asking in this section number 6. This is CBA session number 6 on this contract. Will you commit to asking the city council?
We're going to bring a proposal back to council. That's what we do every
Well,
time.
just say yes.
And we'll present them options,
say
right?
yes
So that
to
would be an option.
Matt, come on now, you're an attorney, not just the 10%. Will you ask them
Right.
to consider
Yeah,
using?
Gary, everything is on the table. Yeah, we will consider using the reserve. Gary, what I'm telling you is it's not good fiscal policy. You're not paying your car payment with your savings
You know
account.
what? There's a lot of things that aren't good fiscal policy right now. Employers are dealing with COVID. There's a lot of things that aren't good fiscal policy anymore. But right now, when you're down officers, you're trying to stay competitive, you're trying to retain officers, it's not good fiscal policy to put your head in the sand and say, because it's a non-recurring thing, we're just not going to consider it. That's bad fiscal policy, to be narrow-minded. And we're
Not
asking,
narrow.
oh yeah, it is. It is, because what's a rainy day fund for? For emergencies. Do you not think this is such a time as that? I would say
Gary, how many officers are we down right now?
down more than, I guarantee you're down more than you think sitting in your city attorney's office.
Is that 9, Chief?
How
Because
many?
those men and women will
No.
tell you that just because someone is in the academy right now, it's not a damn bit of guarantee that they're going to make it. And they will tell you that.
That's absolutely true.
Mhm.
Ask the union side of the table, the people that really know. How many are they down, Jared?
Wait, like a I know the chief's office and I know recruitment they've been working hard. Like I brought up last time was I know we're working hard to get as many people as possible.
I'm not talking about how hard
Right.
an effort you do to get people, but getting someone in there and keeping them from being plucked by other agencies is another thing.
Correct.
And getting them through the academy, getting them through the range, getting them to pass the test, getting them to put the uniform on and then not the, oh crap, what did I just get into, as I heard happen with the DeLand officer. I mean, the retention rate, the percentage of probability that someone's going to make it, you can't just say, well, we got 10 in the academy and we have 8 openings, so we're good. It doesn't.
How many have we lost to another agency this year? How many have we lost to another agency this year?
I don't know. That's something you guys should be tracking.
Well, no, you said they're getting plucked.
They can get plucked when you've got other agencies paying more, and you guys
Well,
are
how
not.
that happen?
Matt, we're the thing that the thing that we want to keep bringing up also is that we want to not continually replenish with no experience. We cannot consistently put officers on the road who are in 6 months, 1 year, and then they are now your 1 year officers have got 4 officers that are less time than them. That we want to avoid that because that's where you see in these major cities, Daytona Beach, if we're going to put things really locally, where quantity on the street does not mean quality. And I'm not saying that, like I've said before, it's not to say that we do the best we can to recruit, but if we have officers coming in and for whatever reason, now again, we have officers who I've had 3 recruits go, at $20, $20.50, I mean, it's still $1.50 less I could go to county. They don't mind taking that hit. I don't want to just get in this argument about numbers because it's not as simple as just saying it's a number. An officer is not a number. Attorney Wilson and you as an attorney, if you were both replaced tomorrow morning by me, who was fresh off the bar, and your employer said, "Well, we like Jared. He's cheaper, Matt. Sorry." Your first argument would be I've got X amount of years. This is bullshit. Same with Gary. Gary would say, "You're replacing me for a cheaper product." I'm sorry, but your officers are not. We're not the guys that do the sprinklers. We are not people who go down a piece of paper and go, "Okay, I responded to a fight and this guy was trying to murder his ex-wife in the street. Well, let me go real quick and see what the checklist is." They have to make that decision. And when this city is in the news because one officer fucked it up, there's all your money. There's all the money that we want to save. The city council wants to save, right? We don't want to pay for the experience. Well, but we're going to pay a $400,000 lawsuit, a couple $50,000 lawsuits, a couple batteries, God forbid, whatever happens internally. That's what we're avoiding with this. And the CPI argument, I want to stop hearing the CPI argument because, as I've continually said, the same thing. We're trying to get ahead of having to come back here next year and say, "Hey, 10% again." Next year, I want to come in and go, "What are you thinking? 2, 3? We're all happy. Everything's great and grand. Maybe we could get seat covers for the trucks." I want to come up with petty dumb shit because everyone is happy with the wages. I want the argument to stop with this because we've had to try to push compression problems and we've had to try to fix things that it goes back to, well, we recruited.
Jared, the council's trying to put you in the top tier. I mean, they're dedicated to doing that. You may not be the number one.
Let me ask you this.
Not be the highest paid agency, but you will be in the top tier, and they will continue to do that every year. They continue to fight for you to be in the top 2 or 3 agencies in the
For-
County, every
Starting
county.
salary?
For Matt,
You're
Matt,
talking about starting pay though, Matt?
I mean, that's
Are you
insane.
measuring, are
That's
you talking
totally
about starting
insane.
pay?
I'm talking starting in the.
Why aren't we
Being
talking
in
about the
the-
starting pay?
being in the ballpark for this agency, Matt, like I have presented, and everyone knew exactly the joke I had said when I said it wasn't fictional, but your city wants your officers to be they want us to be civil attorneys half the day and go out to neighbor disputes about bushes. They want us to go do reports on where every other agency in this area that doesn't want to hold this top tier CALIA certification, which because it saves the city money, it saves the police department insurance money, doesn't do anything for me, doesn't do anything for the officer who now has got to go, yep, I got to get 6 pieces of paper, I got to do this report because this is all the CALIA guidelines that you're not paying for it. I worked for Daytona Beach 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I handled about 14 calls for service with no uses of force. Everyone was happy with the service. I did no reports. No reports. I did one report on a guy I arrested. I had a great day. Okay? I had a great day because I'm not inundated with paperwork and being questioned every single second and having to go handle petty calls. Your city, the city council should know better. They should know better. This city is not far away from Daytona Beach. And if you want to see what the future holds, when I go to other agencies and I see out of the gate, these supervisors, because they're so overworked and they don't have the resources, and they are immediately putting notes to their dispatch, close noise complaints, reckless drivers, narcotics complaints. You can pull this tomorrow morning from CAD, from Daytona Beach. This is bad. That's bad. That's the future. That is your future for this agency, because the city will grow, crime will go up, and we will hit that breaking point, and we will unfortunately be in the same boat of always trying to catch the crime, and we'll never catch up to it. Daytona Beach is so in bad shape, with not the fault of the officers, not the fault of the administration, the fault that their city does not back them and give them the resource they need. I never thought that I would be working and hear supervisors having to hold shootings. Hold shootings. That is what we want to avoid. I will not be here when I'm 60 years old. I guarantee you, I will not be here. I won't be here when I'm 50. You have to know that the officers that you pay for today, you are building them and you're making them the superstars 10 years from now. And he'll be sitting in my seat, hopefully, so I can relax for once. And he will tell you the same thing of, hey, the city's running great because the city is paying to keep good officers on the road, fully staffed as needed, doing a good job to pull other officers that we want to poach from other places. This is not a problem. This was not a problem wage proposal. So that's the.
I
And I was
have
gonna
to,
say, if you don't take care of the problem this year, which you could with the reserves if you had to. Those reserves may not be there 3 years from now, but you have them now, and you can fix it now. And no one knows what the future holds, and that's why it makes little sense to me to not at least consider doing it this year, because for the very reason Jared just said, let's say you guys come back and say, okay, the city, it's gonna hurt them a little bit, yeah. But remember what I said, a good settlement is always both sides not getting exactly what they want. The city says, all right, you guys came down from 20 to 10. Yeah, we're gonna have to tap into our reserves a little, not what we had hoped for, but we're gonna use it this year. Do the 10% increase. As Jared said, next year, we don't have to come to the table and ask for 10%. You know?
so would
it's
you
gonna
be open to then, because I do want to get a deal done, right? I don't think anybody wants to go to impasse. That's not a good day. Gary, I will put every option on the table for council to consider. Could one of those options be a multi-year agreement? would you be willing to say, yes, if you guys, and this is not a formal proposal, but if, let's say we could do 10, would you say, okay, then we'll take 3 next year, right? Maybe that's a selling point I can use to go, listen, it might hurt you year 1, but year 2 is going to be a little bit less for you. Would you be open to something like that?
That's gonna be tough.
I'd say,
Sounds creative.
you know,
That's one of the first creative things we've heard. Thank
I
you.
say, of course, we're open.
I promise I'm
Of-
trying,
Of
Gary.
course
I am.
of course we're open. I think it depends. So the following number would have to be what this number is. If you tell me that the city council goes, okay, screw it, do it, and then what's the percentage for the next year? We figure out what we would be comfortable accepting, and I think it's quite possible. I don't see a 3, but I could say a
Probably not.
2.
Okay.
It's,
Again, I've got to crunch those numbers. So
am
that-
I
that's the
open? Yeah,
question is-
I think we're
Are
all
you
open.
saying like- Are you saying like, Heather, maybe like just hypothetically, not pinning you down to this,
Yep.
like and then listening to what Jared just said, you saying like a 10-5-3 or a 10-5-4 or something like that?
So I would only be looking, like you said, 2 years, and I do have to
2
run. I've
years.
got a 1 o'clock, but let's just say, hypothetically speaking, okay, 10% is going to cost X dollars. If I use one-time funds for X dollars, but year 2, right? Because the big concern is if I use one-time funds for recurring expenses, what's it going to cost in year 2?
Exactly.
How much are we going to have to raise taxes, right?
Right.
Well, if I know we've got, let's say 3%, for example, if I've got a 3% for year 2, then I know how much I have to or not raise taxes year 2. That gives them either a comfort level of going, yeah, I'd be okay doing that for year 2, or no, that's going to be too high for us. We still can't do that. At least gives them some options to go, is this a possibility, right? Knowing what that second year number is going to be and how much they will have to raise taxes in order to cover it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something we would be open to.
Like
But,
I said, I'm going to put all options out there. I'm
I would
open,
like to add
so.
that Matt said that we've never used CPI data, which is not true. When I first started here 16 years ago, everything was based on CPI. Our step plan was 2.5% plus CPI up to a
Used
certain
get a COLA
amount.
every year,
Right.
up into 2007, I think was the last year.
So we do have a precedent to base it on that. And then the other thing
Yeah,
is,
Jared, I'm not saying it shouldn't be considered, I'm just
Right,
saying
right.
it's not something that is an automatic, that CPI goes up, we have to go up by the exact amount.
Yeah, that's correct.
A mistake if it was never considered. It's certainly something that we consider as part of the total equation. It's just not something that we can always match every year for the
Right,
same reason that I
right.
stated, that, you know, it doesn't always go with a decrease, not that CPI generally decreases, but it doesn't go the other way generally.
yeah, I've never seen it decrease in my lifetime.
And Heather, we agree with you, and Matt too. We don't want to have to go to impacts, but as of today, that unless, and I appreciate your creativity there, Heather, saying, would we consider a 2-year deal? I mean, everything, I mean, we'll certainly consider it. If you go and come back with something, we would love to try to get this resolved. That's not our goal. I mean, to have to go to impasse, but what prompted that was we weren't hearing any movement. And that's what we wanted, or we thought we were going to hear that today. And that's why it was discouraging to not hear it today. But if you will go back as we requested it and take our proposal back to the city, if the city wants a 2-year deal as a condition of offering 10% for this first year, I mean, certainly we'll
And then maybe
consider it.
plus a ratification or a sign or a bonus,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the numbers, right? We might be able to sell a lump sum bonus, right? But that does nothing for recruiting, which is the city's goal. So it doesn't really solve the problem.
Yeah, Gary, I know your schedules is a little busy and a little tight with what you've got going on, but maybe if you can shoot me some dates that work for you and your team, either late next week or early the following week.
I think 2 weeks from now, yeah.
Okay.
The week of October 4th, which I think is 2 weeks from, no, that's 2 weeks from Monday. That week would work. And my trial is the week of the 27th, which is a
Okay.
week from Monday. So 2 weeks from this Monday during that week would work. I did want to ask you, Heather, or you or Matt could ask, do you know why, it's my understanding, are the lieutenant's hourly rate, this is a question I had sent to me to pose, and I want to throw it out there. I think the lieutenant's hourly rate will be $39.43. Is that right?
I do not have the hourly amount. I can tell you they're currently at 81,556, and they agreed to a 5.3% increase for next year. I don't know what those numbers shake out to be.
I have the county's proposal right here in front of me.
Okay, yeah, it comes out to
Can you
about
send that to
39.
me?
Yeah.
That was my math. And DeLand's at 31, so I guess what I'm saying is, it just looks like when the officers over there are 2242, and then Port Orange is, you're advocating starting at 2050. It looks like a lot of the dollars are shifted, or maybe have been, certainly the lieutenants appear to be well compensated comparatively from some of the other agencies, but
So right,
that's why obviously our focus is on the officers and the sergeants.
I'm looking at 15-year deputy in Volusia County, hourly rate $34.22, where ours is 26.
Okay, yeah, if you
Or
can
actually
send that to me.
25.75.
So, like I said, I'll do my best and we'll reconvene, like I said, in a couple of weeks. So send me
Yeah,
some
the
dates
week
and
of
times
the-
that work for everybody.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Heather, it looks like the week of the 4th, I'm just looking right now, I can tell you I don't know if there's any day of the week that's better for you and your team than the other, but
Not really.
When's your trial, Gary?
the 27th, week from Monday, so the following week, the week of the 4th of October, but I know we're technically past the contract at that date, but
But today's Friday.
I'd be ready a week from today, right? So as soon as you guys can get
Gary,
that
is it-
together.
Is it possible for you to do
a Zoom,
even by Zoom, the 24th of September?
a week from today?
Which would be next Friday?
Yeah, I think I could do that. I mean, if you guys let me appear by Zoom again.
Because
and we may not need, 2 hours at that
Right,
time.
because ideally, what I would hope for the next one is Heather to have enough time to do their meetings and numbers and stuff, and then if we, especially coming in with a 2-year thing, hopefully we can settle that part at the table and basically be done, bring that for vote, and that way we're not overrunning stuff, and then you can focus on your trial the following week.
Okay. I can make that happen if that gives you, Heather, and Matt enough time to do what you have to do on your end.
Yeah, I think it could be ready by Friday.
Okay.
I blocked the whole day off with trial prep, so just let me know what time then you would want to do a Zoom call.
Better
and
time
have
for you
me
guys?
appear and have
Morning,
you all there.
afternoon, doesn't matter.
They're both fine.
Okay,
Morning, afternoon's okay.
okay, we'll see what works
And I
for
know I got a
everyone.
little emotional there, but I'm fighting for, I know you guys are all city employees, and I appreciate what you do, and I'm advocating obviously for our side of the table, but, at the end of it all, all of you are on the same team, so to speak. You're all working for the city. And I encourage us all to keep trying to plow ahead. And I mean it, Heather, when I say thank you for, being creative with thinking about the second year. And if Matt was a part of that idea, that's great. We want to try to get a resolution here. But I just think we have to go back, and this is where I think the council needs to really carefully consider, using some of those reserve funds to do the right thing now and have a lesser problem a year from now, rather than kick the can down the road.
All right, we'll see what we can do.
All right.
I gotta run. Thanks
Thank
guys
you,
so
Gary.
much. Take care. Have a good
All
weekend,
right, thank
everybody.
you all.
I still love you, Jared.
Love you,
All right,
Matt.
thank you, Matt.
I guess I don't get any, Matt.
No love for anybody else.